Hi, so if you're anything like me and you like to keep your PC files organised and everything in its place, let me show you how to do that in one click, where I keep my naming convention standard with every folder I create, and within every folder the set of subfolders that is required for that particular project. Keep watching. So my solution is using older technology called batch files, and I'm going to show you how to write a batch file that will achieve a nice consistent theme with folder names and subfolders within to house your projects. So it's to prevent your folders looking something like this. So if I drag this on, where you've made an attempt at naming folders, but you've got different names, different ways of naming, and then when you go inside, they don't quite match up. We have different ways of storing those files within. So it gets a bit messy and it gets a bit hard to find the things that you're looking for to move your project forward or get a resource from it. So I'm going to show you how to make that go away and become consistent at the click of one button. So you'll notice I've created shortcuts here, and each of these shortcuts runs the equivalent batch file. They're all pretty much written the same, just with slightly different default paths and folder structures within, depending on what they're dealing with. So for instance, this is new video projects, new graphic projects when I use Photoshop, etc., or new web projects. So if I just kick off by creating a new video project, I'm offered up the command prompt window, and it's running the code I've written inside, and the very first thing that asks me is enter the project name. So for the sake of this exercise, I'm going to name it YouTube test folder, and the code itself prefixes a date in there. I like to name all my folders with the year, month and day, then the project name. And if I click return, it asks me another question: where would I like to save this folder or create this folder? And I have one place in my PC, one drive and one folder where I place all my video projects, hence the D for default. If I press D just now, it will go and create this new folder in that default drive. But for test purposes, I'm going to create this back in that messy folder area that you've seen earlier. So if I drag this back on, we'll notice the path here is in a hard disk called projects within a folder called projects. So I'm just going to lift and take a copy of that path, and I'm just going to paste it here. And just one click paste it. So I've told it what the project name is, and I've told it where I want to save it. And if I hit return, that's it. The batch file has went away and done its magic. So if I go and find that projects folder again, we should find that we have a new YouTube test folder with the year, the month and the day. Now here's the difference. When I open up this folder, I have a set of subfolders that I like to use for all the resources and elements of building a video or producing a video from Premiere or whatever software that you use. And that means every video project will have the exact same setup with the exact same folder structure, so I know where to find things. So you get what I'm trying to achieve here, and it's standardising these subfolders within each folder for whatever new project it is. So let's get rid of this. So how do you start off by creating a batch file? So very simply, it starts off with life as a text file. So if you right click and you select new and you hit a new text document, you end up with this text document. And you notice a text document because of the extension. So if you're not aware of the .3 characters, that is called an extension, and it means it's a text document. So I'll name this YouTube batch files. So you can name it something. Now at this point in time, it is just a text file, and if I double click, it'll use Notepad to open this up. Coincidentally, if you can't see the .txt, by default on Windows, these extensions are switched off. And what you have to do is you have to go to your Explorer. So open up an Explorer window, and if you go to View at the top, the menu items that's shown here is File Name Extensions, and by default that is like that, it's off, so you want to make sure that it's checked on, and that means that you will see this .txt or whatever it may be at the end of it. So you can open up this text file and start writing the code, and once you're happy, convert the file to a batch file, or you can create a batch file at the start and then edit the batch file. Now we will turn this text file into a batch file simply by naming the extension differently. So rather than txt for text, we want to name it BAT for batch, and that will also change the icon and behavior of how Windows uses that file. So let's go ahead and do that. So if I right click and say rename, rename, and what it thinks I'm doing here is naming the whole thing, but I just want to go at the end of it, and I'm going to rename it as .bat. And if I hit return, I'm going to be prompted, are you sure I want to change the extension? So there we go, it's just checking that I'm doing the right thing, and when I click yes, you'll see the icon change. Now that icon changes because it's associated to a different file type. It wants to open this file up differently. Now if I double click this, nothing really will happen. You may see a flicker. Let me try. Oh, also you may have to run it as administrator. But you didn't see anything really happen because there's no code within it. What this generally does is it will open up the command prompt window, and it will run the code that will go into this body. But how do we get into this now to start writing the batch file code? We simply right click, we select edit, and then Notepad will open up the content. So we have the text file, the Notepad, ready to receive the code. Now I'm not going to painfully write every piece of code in here and let you watch and follow along with me. I'm going to talk you through one that I've written earlier, and I'll give you the instruction of what everything means clearly, and I'll leave a link in the description below where you can download this code and you can amend it for your own purposes, for the folder structures that you may wish to create and the naming convention that you may also wish to create. So I'll close this down just now, and I'll bring the batch file code for that very batch file we ran earlier, the new video project. So here it is. So let's maximize it so we can go through it. So with all batch files, we use this @echo_off. That just means that any of the code within that's not a prompt to ask a question doesn't get seen. It doesn't show you that into the batch file. If this wasn't here, you would see all of these statements and all of this code being built up, which obviously would be confusing and it would be unusable. So you start off every batch file with this @echo_off to hide the important things. Now the REM in capitals is just a note. In development terms it's called a comment. It allows the person who's written the code to say what they are doing so that another developer can read what that particular thing does. So similarly for yourselves, I'll leave instructions on what is actually going on, and it'll be above every sort of line. So the very first thing that happens here is I'm declaring my default path. Remember I told you that if I have to put D as the answer to the box, it would store in my default space where I keep all my video projects. So this is the folder where I generally keep all my video projects. So basically default here is a variable. It could be a constant because this path won't change, it'll always stay the same, but nonetheless it's a variable and it's just like a box that holds the value. So if you to look inside this box default, you would see this path. The next 3 lines here, you'll note it's a set command, and basically what is happening here it's setting the variable year to read the date, so the date value from the system clock, and you want to go to the 6th position in that date and take the 4 characters from that position onwards. So that happens to be the year if you write the date with 2 digits, 2 digits and 4 digits, including your spaces or forward slashes. And similarly with month, that's a positional date for month and the positional date for day. So we have the year, the month and the day. So why am I doing this? Because I want to use year dash month dash day to prefix to my project name, as that's my preferred method of naming. If you don't want the date in front of any of your projects, simply remove this code here, or you can keep that in and simply remove these 3 lines here, year, month and day, because basically you're saying once you get the project folder name, the project name, prefix the date, these values here in front of that name. So that's grabbing the date, and then I'm again setting another variable called project, so that's going to hold the project name. Now the /p means pause to ask the question, so we're going to see this question here pop up in the command prompt window. You've already seen it, where it asks you to enter the project name. You enter something meaningful. Now that answer that you type in, it's that is going to be stored within the project variable. So YouTube test folder, that's what project will be holding. And then the next question it asks is enter your location, or D for default. So whatever you type in, location is going to hold that value. So whether you have copied and pasted a path in, or whether you've just simply put D for the default path, which you would have to change up here to suit your default path for your place where you keep your video files, it's going to hold that value in that location folder. And simply, I've touched on this step just a minute ago. What we're doing now is we're saying, okay, you've given me the project name, and I'm going to use that project name, but I want you to also prefix the year dash month dash day in front of the project name, and save that now to project. So project at this stage is different from project at that stage, because the year with the dashes is now included. And moving forward down the code, we have a decision to make. We have to check what the value of location is. And what this is simply doing is it's checking if location is equal to D for default. And if it is equal to D for default, basically go to the marker that's further down the page called path. So in this instance, if it was D, it would jump to this marker called path here, and then it would run this code. Now if you notice, this structure is exactly the same as that structure. The reason why you need 2 is it depends whether you actually have a different location from the default, or whether you're wanting it to go in the default. So this location can change to many different places, but you want the structure to remain the same no matter what. So if we talk through the path code here, which is basically exactly the same as the code here, is the first thing we need to do is we need to change the directory to default. So it's going to move actually into that folder. So pretty much like when you open up File Explorer and we go and find that projects folder, we're jumping into this space. So we're going to create something new in here. So that's basically what this change directory is doing. It's jumping into that area to create the folder name, the project name you've given it, prefixed by the date. And once it's created that folder, it's then going to set about making other directories within that project folder. And the set of folders I like to have for a video project is videos, images, and within the images I want a place for thumbnails, sounds, sequences, music, output, projects, ads and intros. And that's how I want every video project that I do to look. So it's standardising the folder structure with everything I do. So I hope that's been helpful to you, and remember, I'll leave a link to the code below, or I'll paste the code in, and you can copy this and create your own and edit it to suit your needs. If you think this is a useful video and you want more of this, please could you subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. It means a lot to me. Thanks very much.